Plato and Socratic interpretation. Plato was Socrates' most famous disciple, and the majority of what most people know about Socrates is known about Plato's Socrates. Plato was born to one of the wealthiest and politically influential families in Athens in 427 BCE, the son of Ariston and Perictione. His brothers were Glaucon and Adimantus, who are Socrates' principal interlocutors for the majority of the Republic. Though Socrates is not present in every Platonic dialogue, he is in the majority of them, often acting as the main interlocutor who drives the conversation. The attempt to extract Socratic views from Plato's texts is itself a notoriously difficult problem, bound up with questions about the order in which Plato composed his dialogues, one's methodological approach to reading them, and whether or not Socrates, or anyone else for that matter, speaks for Plato. Readers interested in the details of this debate should consult Plato. Generally speaking, the predominant view of Plato's Socrates in the English-speaking world from the middle to the end of the 20th century was simply that he was Plato's mouthpiece. In other words, anything Socrates says in the dialogues is what Plato thought at the time he wrote the dialogue. This view, put forth by the famous Plato scholar Gregory Vlastos, has been challenged in recent years, with some scholars arguing that Plato has no mouthpiece in the dialogues. The main interpretive obstacle for those seeking the views of Socrates from Plato is the question of the order of the dialogues. Thrasyllus, the 1st century CE Platonist who was the first to arrange the dialogues according to a specific paradigm, organized the dialogues into 9 tetralogies, or groups of 4, on the basis of the order in which he believed they should be read. Finally, towards the end of his life, Plato composes dialogues in which Socrates typically either hardly features at all or is altogether absent. These are the late dialogues. There are a number of complications with this interpretive thesis, and many of them focus on the portrayal of Socrates. Though the Gorgias is an early dialogue, Socrates concludes the dialogue with a myth that some scholars attribute to a Pythagorean influence on Plato that he would not have had during Socrates' lifetime. Though the Parmenides is a middle dialogue, the younger Socrates speaks only at the beginning before Parmenides alone speaks for the remainder of the dialogue. While the Philebus is a late dialogue, Socrates is the main speaker. Some scholars identify the Meno as an early dialogue because Socrates refutes Meno's attempts to articulate the nature of virtue. Others, focusing on Socrates' use of the theory of recollection and the method of hypothesis, argue that it is a middle dialogue. To discern a consistent Socrates in Plato is therefore a difficult task. Instead of speaking about chronology of composition, contemporary scholars searching for views that are likely to have been associated with the historical Socrates generally focus on a group of dialogues that are united by topical similarity. These Socratic dialogues feature Socrates as the principal speaker, challenging his interlocutor to elaborate on and critically examine his own views, while typically not putting forth substantive claims of his own.